So one thing I did as kind of I was looking at myself, I think I told you about how as CMO, I structured my schedule into like every 15 minutes. And Amy did this in one of her, I don't know if it was that one or another one, where she said kind of like, hey, structure your schedule. Um, and if you plan, it's kind of like plan for success. So I think what she does is she sits down every Sunday and she plans out like, here are my non-negotiables. Like, for
Yep.
her, it's going to be, hey, I got blocks of OR time and this and that. And then she plans that out. And I think I made a comment underneath about how, and what I was thinking in my head is think about, Chris, how people, if you're planning, well, okay, you do this. Like, you have your Disney World trip every year with your run and stuff like that. So think about how people plan a vacation and how some people are meticulous, and you probably have to at Disney, right? It's like, okay, we're gonna do, I don't even know them, I'm making it up. We're gonna do Animal Kingdom on Monday, and we're gonna do what Epcot on, whatever. The thought I had was we do that for things like vacation. What if we did that for our life? And what I saw Amy do is every Sunday she's sitting down, I imagine almost like in your backyard, right? Cup of coffee. I'm going to plan out my week. And what are the things I can control? What are the things I can't control? And then you start to realize like what windows you have in between. And the thought I had was to layer on top of that, and I've actually done this myself, and I realized I got away with it, or I got away from it. I need to start doing this again. Is the overall topic is who is the person I want to be? Okay. Well, ultimately, I can look at the way that I spend my time and where I put my effort, and that's the person I'm being. Right? That's who I am. So for example, let's say big identity headers are husband, father, friend, radiologist, right? And probably other things. Well, then when I use that same thing in retrospect and I look back and I say, wow, clearly being a radiologist is my priority. Far and away, right? Now, some of that's not fair because unless you're in a situation where you're independently wealthy and you don't have to work, like, yeah, you got to take care of your family. So a certain amount of that is I think, like as Amy said, non-negotiable, right? I mean, I got to work. So if you take that part out, then you say, okay, of the times I'm not working, how is my time being utilized? Where am I putting my effort? And so here's where this comes in. There's a saying that I really like, and I want to make sure I get this right. It's if I want to know what I believe, I watch what I do. So people usually do that in reverse, right? They tell you, oh, Chris, I'm this type of person. I'm that type of person. Oh, yeah? Well, you come back and you say, Paul, based on what I see of you, you're this type of person, right? So it's an internal way, and that's where the other post kind of comes in. It's an internal way to hold myself accountable, right? And not in like a stick kind of way. Like, hey, I'm realizing, and this is where the locum stuff comes in, right? I have such flexibility with my locums, Chris, that I can sometimes be like, hey, I can pick up this extra shift with the university. There's almost unlimited what we call internal locums opportunities, and so if I have a block, I'm being much more, do I take that extra shift? Or wait a second, what are these other? No, I'm gonna go to Top Golf with the boys. I'm gonna go out to dinner with Heather. Whatever it may be. And it's like, so I think what I'm thinking about is putting that into like codifying that more. And then almost I was thinking about actually putting that into like a tag along post to Amy's. Because the other thing is, I think we feed off each other very well, the three of us. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking about ways of including her. But does that make sense? It's like taking what she said there and saying, I'm planning my week. Well, a part of that is there needs to be some pre-thought to say, hey, what kind of person do I want to be? These are the things that I know are important in my life. And so if I have that as a header, as I'm making my schedule, because for me, and I don't know what it is for you, I have defaults, right? And for me, a default, if I have empty time, it's often, I might as well work, you know? Whereas, or it can be even far less productive than that. It can be, I'll scroll mindlessly. I'm going to, scroll mindlessly on social media. I'll work out again today, right? Like, I have these defaults where it's, for lack of a better term, and Ed can be ruthless about this. So for example, he'll be like, hey, Paul, you told me you did that hard workout again for the 1000th time. Is that really a hard workout for you? You see what I'm saying? Yes, maybe in the moment it's challenging, but is there any real question whether I'm going to be able to walk a mile with the rucksack on? No, it's not a question anymore. It's just, you know what I mean? So it's, and I'll say it to you before, but do you get that idea? It's like you can use that calendar in both directions. And if you actually do it in a way, and I didn't even ask Amy this, but if you do it in a way, certainly electronically, where you can look back, it's then very easy. You could say to me, hey, Paul, send me your calendar next month from last month, and I'll tell you what it appears what your behavior says your priorities are. And it just becomes a great internal way to say, hey, Paul, you're clearly knocking out, and I can tell you what it's going to look like right now. You are knocking out the radiologist part. How you doing as a dad? How you doing as a husband? How you doing as a friend? How you doing as a business partner, right? Like all these other things. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it does. And there's sort of two aspects of it. I mean, this is something I did. You can see it. It's just
you're blurred. Can you unblur?
Yeah, it's not worth it. It's basically like, I call it my weekly matrix, right? Because one of my bad habits for procrastinating was sitting down every morning and making a list. Right? And the to-do list would often have a lot of low-hanging fruit, or Easter eggs, I'd call them, right? Where I'm just like, I know I'm going to do this. Let me write it down. And then it'll look like I crossed off 70% of my list at the end of the day. When, you know what? Does make the bed really have to be on the friggin' list? Or am I just going to do that, right, as I get up, right? Comforter gets pulled up, throw pillows go back on, dog blanket goes on the foot of the bed because he kicks it off in the middle of the night. All right, and then I'm going to go put my contacts in. It took longer to write it on the list.
Yeah. So
but I get the satisfaction of crossing it off. So in terms of controlling that impulse and not wasting the time, the stuff that is just the mundane, like, okay, clean out your inbox, do your time card, take your meds. I just have a little checklist at the bottom of every day that looks exactly the same. And then the rest of the week is broken into, as something I'm doing for the business, something I'm doing for fitness, something I'm doing, right now, guitar is a big focus, trying to get back into music. So I've got my week printed. I print it out on Sundays, and I'm like, all right, some of these are just scheduled. So when I was still in the midst of all the coaching training, like the recurring classes would just be printed in bold. So I knew I couldn't get rid of those, and they were on my schedule. And then I would look at the white space and just be like, all right, well, if I don't If I have a Tuesday afternoon class, but not a Wednesday, what am I doing with that? Right? Am I going to practice, a foreign language? Am I going to work on guitar? Am I going to do something for the business? And sitting down to plan out these things. And then also, like you said, electronically, having it as a file where I can adjust priorities, right? Now that my coach education has gone way down in intensity, I'm just like waiting for exam results.
Yeah.
I don't have any recurring classes unless I add on some new training program or some new skill workshop. But I'm like, ooh, all that time opened up. What was I doing before I jumped into this program? Wait, guitar, foreign language, fitness were I had more time for those. All right, let me start plugging those back in. And the idea that those priorities will shift, right? It's much easier to do a lot more work, say, at pick up a locum shift, right? I was looking in December, I'm like, well, we just got back from a Thanksgiving trip with the family. The holiday break for my son coming home from college hasn't happened, and my daughter's going to be holed up in her room studying for exams with her crazy school schedule. Okay, I don't even have an opportunity to be much of a dad because, right, the kids are already have other stuff on their priority besides chill with family in between two holiday breaks.
But you
Great.
can only
Put that on the schedule for shifts. And then I picked up a couple extra locums. I'm like, this is a Thursday, Friday. My son doesn't get home from college till the following Tuesday. I'll be invisible anyway. And
yeah.
it's okay to reprioritize that in that time frame versus, like you said, if you don't have any way to track this, either planning it or looking back, then your script in your head of what your values and priorities are versus what you actually do can remain divorced from each other. And you
That's
can
it.
continue on in your delusion that you are the model worker, business person, self-developer, fitness nut, father, husband, whatever the frig it is. And there's no metric, right? I mean, it's like the overuse of SMART goals or the underuse, right? Either, once everybody gets into the micro of specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound, they fix the game, right? I'm going to make this goal achievable by having it be so small it doesn't actually get me anywhere. But it is a SMART goal, and I checked it off my spreadsheet. You're like, wait, what's the strategic plan? What do you mean? Right? So some people say the R is realistic and SMART. I prefer relevant.
Yeah.
Because if that goal, that SMART goal is not nested, right? Tactical is
Yeah, I
not
like
nested
that.
under
Yeah.
operational, nested under strategic. What the hell are you doing it for? And those strategic goals are so long term, you're going to be shifting focus one versus the other, but it should make sense for whatever your 5, 10, 15-year plan is, right? Why do I do extra shifts? Well, I want my wife to retire so we can travel. She can't retire yet, right? We don't have the financial wherewithal to do that. So if I can, disappear for a couple of days or nobody's going to miss me anyway.
But that right there, I think is the key part. And first of all, here's another thought. Just because something's an acronym doesn't mean that it can't have. So
Right.
here's because now that I'm thinking, you just came up, said R could be relevant, and I really like that, and it should be as well. But T in not only time bound, but it just made me think timing, right? Like, and
Right.
that's the part that I'm talking. And actually, maybe this is where we could go with this, and because I really like this. The point is what you just said. If I know, for example, my default is I have some space. I'm going to fill it up with work, right? But be more thoughtful about that. So, like you said, hey, my daughter's doing this, my wife's doing this. That's when I'm going to do that thing, right? And so now that could be the second T, right? Timing. So here are the overall goals, but I'm not just, and that's, I think I'm glad you said it. That's what I tend to do. It's just, I have free time. Bam. It's almost like, right, hitting everything with a hammer, very blunt approach to it. and then leaving everything else to chance. Whereas I think if you have this schedule and you can say, hey, as I'm looking at this, no, the kids are coming in for Thanksgiving. No, I know they're going to ask me. Of course, they're going to ask me for time because everybody needs time on holidays. Nope, I need to be dad. I need to be husband or whatever it may be. Hey, everybody's doing their own thing during, well, I don't know. Let's make it up. Second week of January, I'm going to crank. Yep. And so to me, I think that actually that's what it is. It's the combination of that relevance and timing. And then the other thought I had was I'm the exact, or I would say my tendency is the exact same way. And I think I've shared the example of